Joined as always by our Barth.
That's a bit. That's a match.
No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I know this sounds like a first world problem. It
Poor
totally
Evan.
is. It totally
Poor
is.
Evan has to
Okay.
go to Las Vegas and watch football.
God.
Oh, no.
It's
How is
I'm
he
sorry.
going to get
It's
by?
Just not, it's a story of my life. I feel like every other week.
Do not make me
There's-
poor Evan you two shows in a row.
There's some sort of poor Evan moment all season long when I would even have a little bit of an ounce of complaining about having to travel to a road game or something like that on Thanksgiving, whatever it was. Alex in the brigade down in the media workroom. Poor Evan. Oh my goodness. All right. I get it. All right. It's first world problem. I'm spoiled. I am very lucky. I understand that. That doesn't mean that sometimes, things are kind of stinky. All right, Alex, Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Patriots Catch-22. We got a big theme of the show today.
Okay, hang on.
I like
Before we
themes.
start,
Yes.
though, real quick, I was, I'm in the other room. I got here early. I was listening
It
to
was killing
Unfiltered.
you. He's texting me from the other room.
Yeah, I was trying to get you.
I
I was trying to get you to laugh on air.
Yeah.
You walked into a poll.
Okay, so we were telling old stories about when we went to Patriots games as fans, before
Okay.
we did this for a living and went as reporters. And the story that I was telling was Jacksonville Patriots. I want to say it was 06, right? 05, 06, somewhere in that range, a divisional wild card round type game. And it was one of the coldest games, I think, still on record at Gillette Stadium. It had to have been wind chill in the negatives, right?
Yeah.
So we went to the game. We stayed for the whole game, as is tradition. And I'm walking out of the game at the end, and I had my head down because I was so cold that I was just trying to, look one foot at a time, one foot in front of the other to get to the car. And I walked right into a Gillette Stadium telephone pole.
Outstanding.
Yes.
Outstanding.
And I was, mind you, I was like 13, so I wasn't even drunk. Like,
Yeah,
this was
no,
just,
yeah, you're just
this
dumb.
is just sober kid me being dumb. Yeah. Yep.
All right, I just needed that story.
Yep. So there's that story again. So everybody that was listening to Unfiltered has now heard it twice today.
Okay, now we can get into your theme.
So I like themes. I enjoyed when we do this because I think it's a good jumping off point for the show. So everybody wants to talk wide receivers. It's the fun position. Let's face it. It's the fun position to talk about. It's not the only position the Patriots need by any stretch of the imagination this offseason, but it's the fun position to talk about. So my theme, my question that I want to present to people, and people can call in 855-PATS-500. You can email in webradio@patriots.com, and this goes hand in hand with what I posted this morning of my wide receiver rankings that we're going to pick through here a little bit as well. How would you like the Patriots to go about upgrading at wide receiver? Do you want to see them trade for an established wide receiver? Do you want to see them draft a wide receiver? Do you even believe that they actually have better receivers than we think because of what they were dealt with coaching-wise last year? I'm willing to hear that argument that bringing back Jakobi Meyers and Kendrick Bourne and Devontae Parker and Tyquan Thornton in his second season, like, I'm willing to hear that argument that maybe it all gets better with Bill O'Brien back. So what direction would you like to see the Patriots go in at wide receiver to hopefully, eventually, maybe, if a man can dream, that we finally get one of those guys, right? And you know what I mean, one of those dudes. Like, how do they go about doing it? How would you like to see them do it? And we'll start with that, and we'll also get into, like I said, Jakobi Meyers' market, the wide receiver rankings for the draft that I released today that I know that a bunch of people have already chirped me in the emails, it looks like, about how much they hate my rankings.
Good.
And you can tell me how much you hate it as well. But let's start there. Alex, how would you ideally, now obviously it doesn't have to be, we can almost do ranked choice voting with it, right? Like, it doesn't have to just be one answer. But how would you ideally like to see the Patriots approach wide receiver this offseason?
I am really not interested in the big true X outside receiver. I know that that's what's sexy, but we've talked enough about the Bill O'Brien offense running through the slot, right? So I think T. Higgins is an outstanding player, especially given what he cost. I'm not saying if they trade for him it's a bad move, but I'm not super interested. That being said, And I've talked about this a lot. I want a guy who's proven he can do it in this league. I'm not very interested in the draft. Not high and not as the only move. I think if they want to supplement an addition with the draft pick, there's certainly some good options there. But I want a guy who's proven he can do it and a guy who can play in the slot. Doesn't need to be slot exclusive. Can be one of these hybrid guys. But a guy who can step into that Julian Edelman, Wes Welker role in the Bill O'Brien offense. That guy's Jerry Jeudy. Plain and simple.
Okay.
That guy is Jerry Jeudy.
Okay, so what are you giving up for Jerry Jeudy?
So I look at what A.J. Brown went for last year, which was just a first-round pick straight up.
Right.
I don't think Jerry Jeudy's or let me rephrase. It's not that I don't think Jerry Jeudy's as good as A.J. Brown. I think he's probably closer than most people realize. He's been in a bad situation, but he's not worth what A.J. Brown was worth. Does a second-round pick get it done?
Maybe. I heard a trade that we had a caller call in today. It said like a third this year, then a second next year.
Oh, yeah.
Right? To try to like stagger it a little bit.
Sold.
Something
Done.
like that.
Do it. I'll go pick him up from the airport.
Logan or Providence?
Either one. Either one. It's that good of a trade. You know, maybe if they want to throw in another pick, I'll do Logan. It's a little closer. At least to where I live. I would even consider, and I don't believe the Broncos have any first-round picks, right? I feel like I've said this on the show, and then people have called me on it.
So they got one back, I think, for the Bradley Chubb trade, right? They traded Bradley Chubb to Miami.
Yeah,
and I think they
since traded that
for
pick.
Sean Payton.
Yeah. So they don't have any picks until the third, but like if they can somehow get, or maybe it's in the future, something like that. Like I'm not giving up a first-round pick. I would swap first if that opportunity presents itself. Or, like you said, second and third in different years. Yeah, absolutely I would do that. And then I think there's other ways you supplement that in the draft. But you add Jerry Jeudy to this group, I think you're in shape. The one thing I do not want, I really like their depth at wide receiver right now. I think Devontae Parker's a really good number 2. I think Kendrick Bourne is a really good number 2. A guy that's not going to get number 1 corner attention, is going to get one-on-one coverage. He's going to win a lot in that circumstance. I think Tyquan Thornton can maybe get there. I don't want another guy that's going to come in and just sort of sit in the middle of that depth chart and bury Kendrick Bourne again or bury Tyquan Thornton. Like, I've seen people ask about Zay Jones. Zay Jones is you're just adding Kendrick Bourne again, right? So
we got an email earlier like Juju, DJ Chark, like some of those guys.
I put those guys. They're basically in that same tier with Bourne and Parker. So could they add that guy on top of adding a true number 1? Yeah, I guess. Again, I don't really see the point in that. At that point, go to the draft and get somebody with upside. But, and by the way, this is all assuming I think Jakobi's gone. I think they're going to get priced out of his market. I want a veteran that comes in day one. You talk about this all the time, the Tuesday meeting, right?
Yes.
When the other team sits down in that Tuesday meeting, the first guy they bring up, I am not interested in them adding another receiver unless he's going to be the first guy in the Tuesday meeting, because otherwise it's just redundant.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at as well, but I'll just add to that. I think the 14th overall pick should be on the table in a trade for a wide receiver.
Jeudy even?
So the question is which wide receiver, right?
Right. I'm not going to say that across the board. Like, it's a very vague statement from you.
I believe that this offseason, I think somebody is going to come available that's worth the 14th pick. And I know that I can't use a crystal. I don't have a crystal ball, right? So I don't. But last year, I had told you last year before the offseason even began that Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown were going to move, you would have said, what are you talking about? Why would either team do that? So I believe that somebody of that ilk is going to wiggle free because he's going to be disgruntled or contract negotiations are going to go south or something along those lines. And if I'm the Patriots, the 14th overall pick is on the table for a wide receiver. I think there are other needs, tackle, size at corner, like those things I think you can address on day 2 of an NFL draft. I don't think you need to use the 14th pick in the draft on that, especially in this class, which is pretty deep at those 2 positions, I would say. So let's say, at 46, now, maybe you draft Darnell Wright from Tennessee to play tackle for you, right? Like there's tackles, Jalen Duncan, whoever. I would say that needs to be on the table. I think we're at the point, and this is sort of my bigger theme of it, we are at the point now in the NFL mecca that we can no longer sit here and say that the number one wide receiver is not worth it. You can't say that anymore.
Right.
If you look across the league, the teams that were the semifinalists this year were first, fourth, fifth, and seventh in pass EPA per play. Right? The Chiefs, the Bengals, the Niners, the Eagles. They're all top 7.
All right, let me translate that to English too. A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs don't have that guy, but they have Mahomes. They're
they
the
have
exception
Kelce.
to the rule. And they have Travis Kelce. Okay, fair. They have Kelce.
So every single team.
But I don't want to do the Kelce thing because then people are going to start asking us about Michael Mayer, and that's not the answer.
We can talk about that, though. We're not talking. This isn't about tight ends necessarily. It's supposed to be wide receivers, but we can make it pass catchers. I think that's a general fair point.
Jameer Gibbs catches passes.
Stop it. Okay, so we look at just in general, top 7 teams, the top 4 teams in the league this year were top 7 in pass EPA per play. Number 2 was Buffalo. So probably like the 5th best team in the league was number 2 in the league in that stat. Every single team, I think the only team that was in that group that didn't make the playoffs was the Detroit Lions, who barely missed the playoffs, right? And were an upstart team this year.
They were, just sort of weird. Can I try phrasing this a different way?
Because people don't know what EPA per
play
is?
Well, no, I think you're overcomplicating the argument. I'm just going to name some receivers here. You tell me how many guys are better than this group I'm going to name. Or, like, how many of these guys are in the top 10.
Okay.
And you're going to figure out what I'm doing pretty quickly. Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith.
Okay, wait, what am I answering again?
Okay, just the point being, like, you remember when the Patriots had that?
Just ran it off a bunch of names.
Okay, the point being, if you look at the playoff bracket beyond the wild card round,
yes,
pretty much all of those teams but 2,
right,
have elite wide receivers,
and Jacksonville's getting Calvin Ridley back, so they're going to have an elite wide receiver.
They're in it, but they got there without him. It doesn't.
Right.
But my point being, how many elite wide receivers were left out, or like aren't included in that group?
Right.
It's not many. It's Devontae Adams, who I don't like. That team was just a mess.
Right.
It's DeAndre Hopkins, who only played half the year. What other receiver? Justin Jefferson, I guess, would be the other guy, but he was in the wild card round at least.
Yeah.
Like, all of the elite. Evan, this goes back to my big picture point. It's shifting away from the elite quarterback because how many elite quarterbacks miss
this?
We're just no. Let me make your point for you because I'm making your point.
Okay.
How many elite quarterbacks missed the playoffs last year? Like a sneaky good amount.
Yeah.
Or at least didn't get past the wild card. A couple of them, Herbert, right? Brady, lost in the wild card. How many elite wide receivers missed the playoffs last year? Not a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
We are past the point because I say that we're past the point because I think there was a once upon a time that existed where I agreed to a point with this argument. I liked the way that the Patriots went about things of spreading out the resources at that position instead of just giving it all to one person, right? But I think there's 2 things that have happened in the way that the league has gone now. One is that wide receiver or number 1 weapon, like if you want to call it a tight end, is now the second most valuable commodity to a franchise quarterback. The only thing that's more valuable in the league than a number 1 bona fide stud pass catcher is the quarterback.
Right.
That's it. Okay. Number 2 is that there are not necessarily so many elite tier receivers, but there's so many receivers that can play in the league that you can fill out the 2 through 5 on the depth chart pretty easily.
I would say the Patriots have already done that.
For cheap money, with draft picks, with Kendrick Bournes of the world, right? Like that's a very attainable thing because every year now in the draft, there's 20 receivers that come in from college football, and even though they might not all be stars, they can all at least play as a top 3 receiver in an offense.
And let me add to that too. I think things have changed specifically with the Patriots. Remember, like 2-3 years ago. Oh, they got to go get Odell. And me and you, on our old show, we pushed back strong on that. And people said, what, you don't want a number 1 wide receiver? But they had so many holes to fill. They needed tackles. They needed corners. They needed a quarterback.
Right.
They needed tight ends. They needed, they needed everything after 2020. They've built up the rest of the roster pretty good now. You can start sort of going at, luxury's not the right word for one of these number one wide receivers, but they weren't in a spot where they could overpay for one player because they had too many holes to fill to give up that many assets to only fill one spot on the roster. I'm not saying the roster's perfect outside of that number one wide receiver, but I think they've done a good enough job putting the core together, especially this year where they have almost no pending free agents of consequence. Even their two best players, Jakobi Meyers and Jonathan Jones, they're already sort of deep at those positions. Those guys wouldn't be monumental losses.
Yeah, they're also mid-tier free agents to begin. Maybe not Jakobi, but Jonathan Jones, I think, is going to be sort of a middle-of-the-road free agent.
Teams might see. It depends how you look at it. He's the best slot corner available if a team wants to play him at slot corner.
Yeah.
It's another conversation. The point being, they are also now in a spot where they couldn't have overpaid for wide receiver 2 years ago. They would have set themselves back.
They're in the
now
spot
they can
that
do it.
Philly and Buffalo
exactly.
and Miami, they're in that same spot that all those teams were in. And that's why I said, I know you said it was vague, but the reason why I made it a little bit vague is because I don't know who's going to become available necessarily. I don't think any of us truly know.
Right.
But that 14th overall pick, that asset should be on the table if the right guy comes available. Now, the one thing that I think maybe you and I might differ a little bit on is that I would be okay with trading the 14th overall pick for T. Higgins. I'd be okay with that.
I would. I wouldn't sit here and say it's a bad trade.
So the reason why I would be okay with it is because I think then you can come back in the draft and take a Jakobi Meyers replacement.
Sure.
Right? So you go the cheaper route on that. Plus, I'm more confident in you evaluating, developing that type of skill set than I am the outside skill set.
Yeah, I'm still worried about tackle if you do that. I'm not saying it would be a bad move. I'm not saying I'd sit here and say it's a bad move. But they'd better really have something. They'd better be willing to spend some big money at tackle if that's the case.
I think they could get a tackle. I think they could get a starting right tackle at 46.
Okay.
So I think they can get a starting right tackle at 46.
And then keep Trent for another year?
Right, keep Trent for another year. Maybe you draft another tackle on day 3 at some point with one of those 17 fourth-round picks that they have, right? And you take a Tyler Steen or something like that there, and you grab that and you double dip. That asset should be on the table for the pick. And I would also put on top of that, in 2017, they traded their first-round pick for Brandon Cooks, and then they immediately traded Brandon Cooks for a new first-round pick the next year, right? They played him on his 4th year of his rookie contract. Yeah. They traded him on the 5th year of the rookie contract. I don't want that anymore. They need to trade if they go all in on a receiver.
You couldn't do. There is no guy you can do that with this year.
No, because Higgins and Judy Judy you could.
Wasn't Judy second round pick?
No, Judy's first round pick, like 16th overall. Higgins was a second round pick.
You're right, 15th overall, by the way. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I go get a guy long term that you're going to pair with Mac, and
do the whole thing.
So here's an interesting one though, and maybe it's not quite at that level, but would you take Brandon Cooks back? Not for 14.
No,
but
no, I would take him. That one's like maybe
third round pick.
That maybe is like a pick swap. Because his contract is pretty hefty, and he's getting up there in age. I don't think it is anymore. I don't know. I'm not trading huge assets for Brandon Cooks at this point. But I just don't. I don't want to like.
Oh, it is still massive. Never mind.
I don't want to trap us into like it having to be Hopkins or Higgins or Judy. Right. I'm telling you, someone else is going to come available. I'm not saying it's going to be someone. It's not going to be Justin Jefferson, right? Like, it's not going to be someone that good. I don't think, but it's going to be someone. And I would like the Patriots to be all in. All right. So that being said, I guess let's keep it with the veterans for a second, because we're both in on the veteran market. I think that's where we would like them to start, at least at the position. Let's pivot a little bit to Jakobi here, because we talked about him briefly. So I looked it up in Pro Football Focus. They do like a draft projection, a contract projection article every year on free agents and how much they expect those guys to get. So Jakobi Meyers right now is projected on a 4-year, $64 million deal with $40 million guaranteed. So basically $16 million a year, and you're guaranteeing the first 2.5 years of the deal, right? That's how they're breaking it up for him. Would you do it? What do you think he's worth it? Where do you stand with Jakobi right now?
You got to give me those numbers again.
It's 4 for $60 with $40 guaranteed. That's basically it.
What's that per?
$16 million.
And so over the cap has him, or not over the cap, Spot Track has him at 12.5. It is 4-year 50. I don't think I would. I don't think I would if I think Jakobi's really good at what he does. And in the write-off, the way the Patriots offense is constructed, right? They need more after the catch from that position.
I agree.
Like, I look at Jakobi, if I'm the Eagles, and they have some money to spend. Like, they sneaky have some money to spend. Now they're going to have to pay Jalen Hurts, but
how many people are you going to feed in that offense? You already have Goddard, plus the receivers, plus the run game.
Like, I look at him there, or like if Aaron Rodgers stays in Green Bay, right, where they have those afterburner receivers and him being a sticks mover. I just don't, in this offense without that afterburner guy, I don't think you can pay a guy who's a sticks mover that much. It doesn't make sense, especially if Bill O'Brien's offense is going to look like it was the first time when he was here, and if it's going to look like it did in Alabama, you need a guy in that spot who can create after the catch, and that's just not one of Jakobi's skill sets.
Right. So I'm totally with you on that. The question that I guess I have is, let's say they go out and they get that number one guy. I wouldn't say Judy because that's too much overlap. With
right. If you're going to get Jerry Judy, they're playing the same position. Right, you can't have both.
Let's say they get T. Higgins, right? And I get or DeAndre Hopkins or Mike Evans or whatever. So I actually think that Jakobi would be a decent complement to those guys. But unfortunately, now you're allocating like $40 million to wide receivers.
At that point, that's my thing. Like, they're going to have to spend that kind of money on a wide receiver. There is a way in where keeping Jakobi makes sense strategically.
Yeah.
If you take the money out of it.
Right.
Like you just said, if you pair him with T. Higgins, that's a great pairing. Right.
Right. It's Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, but Patriot version.
Right. And Tyler Boyd, I think, is a guy who's very similar to Jakobi Meyers. Yeah. Although you don't have Jamar Chase, but
let's not get greedy.
It's an embarrassment of riches there in Cincinnati. Shout out Trags.
Yeah.
I don't. They're not going to spend all that money on one position. They're just not. So go out and get that guy that we're talking about.
I don't like it. I don't like that we can't spend all that money on one position. I don't like it.
This show's not about what we would do. Nobody cares what we would do. We're not running the team.
Well, I'm telling you that the team needs to change its thinking. We just got an email from Mike, okay? And Mike said, this is exactly what I'm saying is I have an issue with the way the Patriots think about these things. And I'm getting mad at them for something they haven't even done yet. Like, I just want to put that out there. Maybe they do change their thinking. But based off of their thinking, Mike writes, Bill would never trade number 14 for T. Higgins. Higgins is allegedly demanding a fortune to resign. Welcome to 2023.
Right.
Okay? Where A.J. Brown goes for a first-round pick and $100 million. Where Tyreek Hill goes for 6 draft picks and $100 million. That's the market. That's the world we live in now. If you want to compete, we read off the stats earlier, and this is why I wanted to get out there that the numbers earlier on the top 4 teams in the playoffs this year, the semifinalists, and where they ranked in passing efficiency. If you want to compete at that level, we are at the point in NFL times, whatever you want to call it, where you need to be an elite passing attack. You need to be a top 10 passing offense in the NFL to win anything anymore. We can just look at the last 5 years as a sample, right? If you want to go case study, like Super Bowl matchups, we can do that. If you want to just go trend in the league, we can do that too. If you are not an elite passing offense, you are not winning jack in the league anymore. So this notion that they can't give up a draft pick and a big contract to a wide receiver because that's not what Bill would do, that needs to be what Bill does. Like, he needs to change. They need to adapt because that is now becoming the second quarterback, right? Like the contracts, the assets needed for it, all of it is becoming the second quarterback. And that's just a reality of the situation. And if you don't do that, you're going to be stuck throwing the football to the guys that they've been throwing the football to the last couple of years, which are those mid-tier players. And you're never going to get there like that. You're never going to get there. Now, obviously, drafting them is the best way to go because that's the cheapest route. You draft a guy, he's on a rookie contract, he's cost-effective, he's yours for at least 4 years. Like, that's the best way to go about it. But the problem that we have, and we'll get into the list here shortly, is that they're not very good at that.
Right. Can I add one thing to what you just said? And it's kind of off to the side, but I feel like we need to hammer this point home because I feel like there's people listening to me talking about don't get the X, get the slot, and yards after the catch and rolling their eyes. You need to be a good passing offense. That doesn't mean you need to be the Buffalo Bills or Kansas City Chiefs. You can be a good passing offense without having an elite downfield presence.
I mean, the Chiefs didn't have really an elite downfield presence this year.
You're right. And honestly, in the Super Bowl, where did it turn for them when they started with the yards after catch opportunities? San Francisco 49ers ranked 24th in the league last year in yards before the catch. And now that you brought up the Chiefs, I'm trying to find them. They are... Wow, they might be... Anyway, San Francisco 49ers actually had the same yards before the catch as the Patriots. The difference is they added 2 yards per catch after.
Right.
So I want to clarify what we're saying. You need to have a great passing offense, but there's more than one way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I look at it and say, well, Jerry Jeudy should be on the table, and I get he's not T. Higgins, but there's another way to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, I like Jerry Jeudy too. I would take Jerry Jeudy.
Oh, the Chiefs are tied for 24th with the Niners.
Yeah, they were not a big time downfield passing offense this year. They always have been, but not this year because they traded Tyreek Hill.
Their receivers broke the most tackles though.
I think that this line of thought, I know some people have this line of thought like with similar things with roster building, like team speed on defense, linebacker, like that sort of thing. And I'm not necessarily dismissing that either. They need to evolve what they're thinking at the wide receiver position. They tried to do let's just pay a couple of different guys and spread the ball around 2 off seasons ago when they signed Aguilar and they signed Kendrick Bourne and Hunter Henry, and it made it better, but it didn't make it great. Right. And they need to be great to win Super Bowls and compete for championships in this league now. And I know there's a whole conversation about the quarterback and that.
I mean, let's be honest too. They tried to do the spread it around thing and then had an offensive coordinator that refused to spread the ball around. That didn't help either.
Right. So that's where we're at. I want to take this call from Patty and then we'll get into my rankings. But I really feel like we need to just change. I understand what you're saying, that people care what we think Bill's going to do. They don't care what Evan Lazar and Alex Barth would do. But I'm telling you what I think that they need to evolve to thinking.
So for what it's worth, we did this on the show a couple weeks ago, Evan. We haven't heard the term uncharacteristically aggressive yet.
We need that.
But some of these moves they've made, it does feel different. So I think totally going by the status quo isn't right either. I think that we do need to leave room for them to expand and grow. But to me, that's trading for T. Higgins and paying him $100 million. I think then paying Jakobi Meyers another $60. No. I don't know that they're willing to go to that step yet. But I could see them growing to the point where they see the success the Dolphins had, the Eagles had, and they're willing to take that step.
Just, to close the book on my Jakobi thing, I think if Jakobi ends up comes in below that market value, let's say he's closer to like 10 to 12, then I think you start to entertain that as good wide receiver 2 money.
Let's say it becomes like 3 for 40.
Yeah, then 3 for 40 for him.
And I think 4 for 40, I don't think he takes. Like, I think he'll get better than that. Yeah. But 3 for 40, and then for the Patriots, you buy that year back. Yeah, I could see that's like you said, good second receiver money.
Yeah, and there's Jack, he emailed it and said that there's no way Jacoby's worth that. Go ask the Jaguars and Christian Kirk how much Jakobi is worth.
Yeah, on
the open market, he's worth it. I'm not saying he's worth it. I'm saying on the open market, he will get that.
It's look, I got a C in economics in college, but I understand this much. An asset, and I hate to refer to like people as assets, but it's the only way to do this.
Yeah.
An asset is worth whatever the market deems they're worth. Jakobi Meyers, it doesn't matter what you think Jakobi Meyers is worth. These contracts get bigger and bigger every year because the cap gets bigger and bigger every year. Jakobi Meyers is only worth as much as the team that's willing to pay him the most money. And I guarantee you it's going to be more than we think it is.
Especially if he hits unrestricted free agency, because he's probably going to be the best wide receiver available.
Yeah, and then you get into supply and demand. It's a good year to be a wide receiver free agent. It really is.
All right, Patty, what's going on?
What's going on, guys?
Not much.
So, quick comment and quick question for you guys. Alex, I love your take on Mahomes being Rodgers of balls.
Thank you.
And my question is, have you guys taken a look at Mozzie Smith, defensive lineman from Michigan, yet? And I'll throw out some stats per Feldman's freak list. Over the summer, he had a 33-inch vertical, a 9.45 broad jump and a 9.65 three-cone time. He also logged 22 reps of 325 pounds on the bench press, and the NFL only uses 225.
I have not looked at him yet. I did some stuff on defensive linemen, but just as defensive linemen in general, and thanks for the call, Patty, I'm not really sure how you can always use another big body up front, right? Like you can keep that covered stock every year. If they took a defensive lineman in the 4th round just to keep it rolling, like no one's going to complain. But I have a tough time seeing that as like a major need that there. I don't think this guy is like a top 100 pick or anything like that.
Yeah, he is. No, he is. He's gonna. He might sneak in the 1st round.
Oh, okay. Well,
he's
if that's
one
the
of
case,
these guys that. You know how I feel about Jordan Davis? I'm not going to
Yeah.
compare him to Jordan Davis because I don't think he's that level of athlete. He's not going to run sub-5.
Yeah.
But 6'3", 337, and then the numbers he mentioned there was some of the ways he moves. He is a great athlete. He's going to kill the combine. It's going to shoot his stock up.
Yeah.
I'm not like I take it if the Patriots want him, but they're going to have to use 46 to get him. And I don't know. We saw some guys, and look, they're not 340 pounds like Smith is, but whether it be Dante Stills, Moro Ojomo, some of the guys we saw at the Shrine Bowl, it's a pretty good year for defensive tackles. I don't think that they're in a spot where they need to overextend at that position. And Smith's a great player, but I don't think they need to be that aggressive at that spot.
I think that, yeah, I guess defensive line to me, they have to be so far and away best player available when they come up to pick, and they don't want to move off the pick, right? Obviously, they don't want to trade down or something like that. Where I watched the kid from Texas Tech, Tyree Wilson, I think is his name. Really talented player. I mean, he jumps off the film at you, all the things that you'd want to see with a player like that. But taking that guy at 14, I don't know, right? Like it's not really the best way to use that asset this year. I don't think.
Right.
That's all my opinion is. All right, let's get to the wide receiver rankings that I posted today. Kind of use that to piggyback on this conversation and turn to the draft. We talked a lot about NFL players, right? Veteran players that they could go out and acquire, and Jakobi Meyers and things like that. So I posted this morning or late afternoon, and there's definitely some pushback on one player in particular, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. We talked about it a little bit on PU as well, but we can get my take. But I think originally what my plan here was, this is sort of tiered as well as ranked, right? So I think
it's for the Patriots. It's not just overall.
That's a really big piece of it. And what I was going to kind of explain with the guy that I'm saying was a little bit controversial where I had him ranked is that this is 110% through a Patriots lens. Like, who are the best fits in the draft for the New England Patriots? If I were to make a rankings list of just the best receivers in the draft, it would probably look a little bit different than it did came out. Okay, so these first 4 names, and I'll do it by the tiers when I read them out. These first 4 names I feel like are the tier 1 guys in this draft.
So are these the guys you'd use the 14th pick on?
So this is the problem, right? This is an interesting question. This is tough because
to me, the first tier should be the guys you take with the 14th pick.
So I don't know if I would take any of these guys with the 14th pick.
I love that. Honestly, I love that.
That's
because
what's tough about this.
So many people say just take the first-round wide receiver. And I heard you guys talking about this on PU as well with the quarterback, right? We'll just take the second-round athletic quarterback. That guy's not in this draft. Every draft class is structured differently. There are guys, and this is true at every position every year. A player being a first-round talent does not necessarily mean he's a first-round pick, and a player being a first-round pick does not mean he's a first-round talent. It can go both ways.
Yeah.
Take a wide receiver at 14 doesn't mean anything unless you attach a name to it. You don't just get to say take a wide receiver. What if some of these guys that we're going to talk about who are going to go in the top 10 might not have been first-round picks last year, period. Take a wide receiver at 14 doesn't mean anything.
It's relative.
Right. It's all relative.
So this is, I didn't want to get too into the big picture with the draft with this because I really just wanted to talk names. But I think the one thing that after doing the deep dive into this class, the one thing that I do see as I guess not a concern, a worry, whatever you want to call it, 20 through 40 feels like the sweet spot for this draft at wide receiver. From that instance, I know when I bring up this draft, everybody cries about N'Keal Harry.
Yeah.
But this draft reminds me a lot of the 2019 draft where Hollywood Brown was the first wide receiver taken. I think he was like 25th, right? And then N'Keal Harry was the second one, and he was 32. And then all the good guys went early day 2, mid day 2, right? Like, the A.J. Browns, the Deebo Samuels, DK, McLaurin, like all those guys came after that. So this draft reminds me a lot of that draft, where I think a lot of these guys have the potential to be studs in the NFL, but their sweet spot is probably a little bit further down the board than where the Patriots are currently at. So my tier 1 sort of guys here, number 1 on my list, and it will be number 1 on my list unless he absolutely bombs the 40-yard dash at the combine, Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State, number 1.
I thought you think he's not going to run.
So I dug into this a little bit, and it said that he was going to be healthy enough to participate at the combine.
Okay.
So if he participates at the combine, we talk about this all the time. If he's running a 40 at the combine, it means he's going to run faster than we think.
Right.
If he's not going to run fast, then he's not going to run. Right? Or maybe he'll wait for his pro day where he gets a little bit of a nicer clock.
A little bump, yeah.
Right. So if he runs at the combine, he's going to run quick. So to me, the reason why I like him so much is his route running, his nuance, but I think that his suddenness, his quickness at the top of the route, off the line of scrimmage, like those are the separation qualities that I think stand out maybe a little bit more sometimes than just straight line speed. I think sometimes we get infatuated with 40 times in straight line speed when what we're really looking for is guys that can separate. And I think JSN separates with that suddenness, with that burstiness at the top of the route, off the line of scrimmage, those little sudden movements of lateral agility where he can just explode quickly in a cut and get in and out of the break and create separation. Some of the player comps that I've used for him in the past, like a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who ran like a 4.6, right?
Yeah.
But is just tearing it up. I mean, he's got like 2,000 yards in his first 2 years.
Jarvis Landry back in the day.
Yeah, Jarvis Landry, those types of guys.
Jarvis Landry ran the same 40 as Jordan Davis.
Yeah, he might have been hurt when he ran that 40.
I know, but like it's still, my thing with Smith-Njigba, and look, I say this take now, I reserve the right to change my mind after seeing him run.
Yeah.
They need that yak ability. And
so I think
you watch the Super Bowl, guys like Kadarius Toney, guys like Isaiah Pacheco who could create after the catch. They need speed, Evan. They need speed. I don't think Smith-Njigba gives it to him.
It's fair. I don't know if he has like home run speed. I don't think he does, where he's going to take a 5-yard slant and turn it into a 40-yard gain. But I think he'll take a 5-yard slant and turn it into a 12-yard gain, right? And if he can be a 100-catch guy out of the slot that averages 11, 12 yards per catch, that's a straw that stirs the drink type of guy.
But they've always been able to find that guy elsewhere, whether it was Edelman or Welker. Like you don't need to use the 14th pick on that guy.
I just don't think that happens anymore. I don't think you find that guy elsewhere like it did 10 years ago.
Maybe not undrafted or in a throwaway trade. But I don't think you need to use the 14th pick on that guy either. Okay. And if they wanted Jigba, they have to use the 14th pick.
That's fair. They have to at least trade down and target him in the first round.
Sure. Yeah. And look, if they get a guy like T. Hig, well, then they wouldn't have the pick.
I'm infatuated with JSN because I just watch his film and I'm like, that's
because you like him as the route runner.
That's how it's supposed to look.
Let me ask you this:
right?
You're talking about the ceiling, right? You said the ceiling is like Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yes.
How different is he than Kendrick Bourne?
Amon-Ra St. Brown?
No, Smith-Njigba.
Different.
When you look at the projection.
Different.
In what way?
I think that he's way more consistent getting open.
Okay.
I think he's way more consistent getting open.
But as a guy who can dictate coverage.
I think he dictates coverage in the middle of the field. I don't necessarily think that you're talking about like we got to, comb bracket double whatever this guy like that, but I think he keeps bodies in the middle of the field for sure. And he has a really great understanding.
But the whole problem is there's too many bodies in the middle of the field already against them. They need to spread it horizontally.
I guess. I don't know. I just know that guy's going to catch 100 balls in the league. That's all I know. I know he's
So is Jakobi Meyers.
No, not like this. I think you're going to drop that guy into that Julian Edelman, Wes Welker slot role, Troy Brown, whatever, and he's going to catch 100 passes, and he's going to have 1,100 yards, and he's going to be an absolute chain mover for you, just like he was at Ohio State.
I just think they need more a more explosive angle than that.
Okay, so
look,
let
I
me
think
get to 2 and 3.
I think Jig was a first-round pick. I think he's a really good player. But if we're doing a receiver at 14, I like this next guy a lot better.
So let's do 2 and 3 because here's your explosiveness, right?
Yeah.
I love Jordan Addison. And the reason why I probably have Jordan Addison number 2 and not number 1 is because I'm trying not to be biased towards Jordan Addison because he's a freaking dog.
But here's the
I
thing.
love him.
You have very openly stated you don't like the Pac-12.
I don't like the Pac-12.
So I don't think it's bias if you put him ahead. I really don't because I know how you feel about the Pac-12.
I love Jordan Addison.
Can I ask you, I keep interrupting you, but how much Pitt tape did you watch of Addison?
A little bit because his press coverage reps were much better at Pitt than they were at SC.
Okay.
Just statistically, right? PFF had him as like one of the best press coverage beaters in college football the year before. He was a lot better at Pitt, and I wonder how much this was like level of competition maybe.
Right. But you hate the Pac-12.
I do, but he played in the Pac-12 against Clark Phillips, against Keeblu Kelly, like against some NFL corners. I don't know if he was facing those guys at Pitt.
Not really. Not if he wasn't facing Clemson.
Right. So when I looked at him against Clark Phillips, who's probably going to be like a top 50, he's definitely going to be top 50, probably like fringe first round corner from Utah. His biggest problem was playing through contact, getting off of press coverage. And then I would say even more so than that, once he got off the line of scrimmage, actually separating vertically over the top and being able to stack the corner and then finish by holding the line and catching the football, right?
Yeah.
Like that type of skill I don't think is necessarily there for Jordan Addison, but he is absolutely explosive. Like he's a burst of energy, right? Whenever he gets on the field, he's versatile, can play inside, can play a little bit outside. When he faces off coverage, forget it. Like he eats up off coverage. Like his breaks are fantastic. I love how he's deceptive on his routes too. Every route looks the same coming off the line, which makes it really difficult to defend, especially at that speed. And then you also want the scheme touches, the yak, the Kadarius Toney, like that. He's got that element of his game as well, and Lincoln Riley really featured that last year at SC. So he can do all those things. The pro comp is Devontae Smith. I think he's Devontae Smith 2.0 with one huge caveat. Devontae was much better at beating press coverage at Alabama than Addison is at USC, but if you can scheme him away from contact, like I know a good coach like Bill O'Brien can, he's a stud.
And you've also
100%.
seen him beat press elsewhere. Might have just been a down year kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
so
he doesn't pull away from press corners, right? They grind him down, and that worries me a little bit.
I just think the versatility, the explosiveness, all of it, you give him to a guy like Bill O'Brien. This is the kind of, like, I think JSN would be very good in New England. I do. But I don't think he's going to be like an all-pro here in this system.
Addison's got that potential.
Jordan Addison, if they use him correctly, has top 10, maybe top 5 receiver in the league potentially. And I'm not saying he's definitely going to get there, but I love his ceiling way more. And if they're really going to do this and take a wide receiver in the first round, I'm all boom. All boom. I just want the boom.
So this is funny because I have JSN as number 1 because I'm a tactician, right? Like I'm a nerd, and when a guy runs the route the right way, it gets me all hot and bothered. It does, right? When you are told, okay, we got to run a 12-yard dig, and you run a 12-yard dig, I'm like, that guy's the dude, right?
Right.
I would take Jordan Addison at 14 over JSN.
Okay. So then why do you have him ranked lower?
Because I think JSN's a better player right now. But I would take.
But we started this whole thing by saying the list is about.
I knew this was going to break your mind.
It's about who's a fit for the Patriots.
I would take.
You didn't adhere to your own rules. I love this. This is so peak sports radio.
I would take Jordan Addison at 14 over JSN because unless JSN runs like a 4.45.
Right. So okay. Right? So let me add that.
Aside.
If Jordan Addison runs if JSN runs low 4.4s, the take completely changes. Well, because they're both J's.
Yeah. Addison, to me, for the exact reason that you just said.
Yeah.
Potential. Ceiling. Yeah. Right? I think that guy, and it's funny because when I thought about this, I in my head I was like, Addison's like, it's still a little early for me at 14. But then I remembered last year in the draft, Garrett Wilson goes 10, Olave goes 11, Jameson went 12, and then Jahan Dotson went at 16.
Who we thought was a second-round pick. So
So this is the board.
Quentin Johnson goes in the top 5. Then JSN's off the board because I do think there are teams that will have JSN over Addison.
Yes.
Like, those two could go in the top 10.
Yes.
Now, all of a sudden, Jordan Addison at 14, if that's the guy you want, makes a ton of sense.
Love that guy. Okay, number 3 on my list is everybody else's favorite guy.
So one more thing about Jordan Addison.
All you Eagles out there.
One more thing about Jordan Addison, because it
Eagles.
hits the tradition.
Yeah.
Or it hits the transition. Jordan Addison is what everybody around here thinks Zay Flowers is.
Zay Flowers is number 3.
Yeah.
I like Zay Flowers. I do. I see a lot of what everybody around here that gets them all hot and bothered. It's Zay or bust. Like, I see it. He is an absolute jitterbug. Like, that is what he is. He's quick off the line. He's quick at the top of the route. He runs a whip route like Julian Edelman and Wes Welker would be proud of, right? Like, he can get open on that short underneath type of stuff. He does that. And you want a guy that can create after the catch. This is a guy that can wiggle out of a tackle, slip a few other dudes, and break it 40 yards down the sideline, and you wouldn't be surprised, right? Like, that's Zay Flowers. I also think that you have a little bit more of a vertical element to his game than JSN and Jordan Addison. At BC, at least. I don't know if it will translate fully. We'll see. But his ability on the outside on double moves, even against press coverage, like, there's some really good reps of him getting off press, with his feet, obviously, and he's not a big guy. You're getting off with your feet, and then you're getting vertical. Like, he can do that too. He is a very, very talented player. The size does worry me, and I know I'm like splitting hairs with certain guys with size, but 5'9", 180, is he built to catch 80 passes in the NFL? I don't think he's ever going to, I don't think he needs to be 120, right? Like, he doesn't need to be that volume because he's going to hit some big plays.
But isn't he going to be that volume if they draft him?
It's possible.
Like here.
He might need to, does his frame hold up over 80, 100 catches? And does his ability to get off contact and get out, get away from physical coverage?
Yeah.
Is he able to do that? So the sort of yin and yang that I gave was, is he Hollywood Brown or is he Jalen Waddle, right? Like, because those are the two prototypes, right? And Hollywood Brown and Jalen Waddle are smaller, but they came out. They were both 4'3" guys, but Waddle is an awesome player, and Hollywood Brown is like fine, right? Like, he's a fine player. So which one is he? Is he going to be? Which one? Which side of the spectrum is he going to fall on? Because I think it's possible that he can go in either direction.
Honestly, that's not even necessarily my concern. I just think he's pretty similar to Jordan Addison, but Jordan Addison's a better player.
Jordan Addison's got probably like 6 feet, like
6 foot,
5'11",
6 foot 180. I just looked it up.
Yeah.
So they're probably both going to be there at 14. I don't think Zay Flowers is a bad player, but I'm taking Jordan Addison 10 times out of 10 between the two of them. And I don't think either one's going to be there at 46. So
no.
If you have a shot to draft one, odds are you have a shot to draft both. And if you have a shot to draft both, I'd much rather have Jordan Addison. So that's why I can't get excited about Zay Flowers.
I do like Zay Flowers, though.
I do too, but I like Jordan Addison more.
The one comparison, I mentioned Jalen Waddle because I think Jalen Waddle has come into the league, and as good as he is, he's a really good player. Don't get me wrong. But I don't know if he's necessarily been, and maybe it's just because of the way Miami uses him, especially now with Tyreek, but he's not been that, like, down the field vertical threat. I think that most people thought he was coming out. Yeah. He's been much more of like that slot receiver, right?
That underneath.
Yeah. And I think that maybe that ends up being where Zay ends up filling in the NFL is more of like a really, really good slot receiver that wins on the inside, that wins at the short and intermediate levels and then picks up the yak, not necessarily someone that takes the top off the defense. And I think that ended up what happened a little bit with Waddle. And that's okay. Waddle's got like 100 catches for 1,200 yards this year or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's in an offense where there's a lot of mouths to feed. So I like that comparison. I've also heard, just quickly with the Zay Flowers comparison, I've heard a little bit on the field of Antonio Brown comparisons with him.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think that's a very lofty, there's certain guys that
that's the best receiver in the league. There's
certain guys that I try not to compare people too, right? I'm not going to compare anybody to Randy Moss because Randy Moss is one of one. As much as AB is a head case, I think AB as the player was one of one as well. I think that's unfair to put that in Zay Flowers category, but I can see from a playing style standpoint how you would get there, if that makes sense.
But I can see some of that with Jordan Addison too.
Yeah. Jordan Addison, I think is just Devontae Smith redux. I really do. And that's not I love Devontae. I'm not saying that is a bad thing.
Addison could be a slot receiver, though.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what I'm saying. If he plays in the slot, I see Antonio Brown, but he can play in the boundary, too.
Okay, so here's my last tier 1 guy, and we got some calls. We'll take
Yeah.
those, and then we'll get it quickly. We'll do the rapid fire more on the tier 2 guys. Here's the big one.
Yeah.
Number 4 on the list, the guy that everybody's already emailed in and called in and told me how much of a dum-dum I am for having him this low. Quentin Johnston from TCU. Number 4.
Yeah.
He's too talented to not have in the top 5 of my ranking. I'll give you that. I will also give you that if the Pittsburgh Steelers draft him in April, he's going to be a star.
Yep.
100%.
Or the Bengals.
We know that. Name me the 6'4", 215-pound outside big X receiver that the Patriots have drafted. I will even go as far as to say have acquired. That's not named Randy Moss.
Right.
That's turned out to be a good investment.
By the way, T. Higgins, 6'4", 219.
Yeah.
So you're campaigning for Higgins, but this is kind of the point, right?
Name
They
it.
don't do it. I mean, the next closest guy, honestly, like in that prototype who had success here is probably Demaryius Thomas.
Demaryius Thomas had a success here?
The next closest behind who was more successful than him in that prototype besides Moss?
Does Brandon Lloyd?
I was
Brandon
gonna say,
LaFell?
does
Brandon Fell. Not
he's a
Lloyd.
different kind
Brandon
of receiver.
LaFell, does he count?
He was a different kind of receiver. Also, is he that big?
He was definitely over 6 feet. I don't know if he was that big.
Yeah, but I don't think he was like that. I never thought of him as like that big body jump ball. 6'3", 210.
Yeah.
All right, so Brandon LaFell
LaFell
would be the next closest.
And LaFell was already an NFL receiver, right? Like he already had in Carolina. So
He came here at the end of his career.
This is my thing with this type of player. If you told me that the Patriots were going to go out and get DK Metcalf, I would tell you, yeah, that DK Metcalf's a stud. He would be a stud here. He'd be a stud in all 32 teams. But Seattle already developed DK Metcalf for you.
People forget this. If DK Metcalf was drafted in New England, he wouldn't be DK Metcalf.
Right, exactly.
It's nature versus nurture. The team that selects the player, the environment has as much to do with what the player becomes as the player himself.
Quentin Johnston's strengths are apparent. He averaged 18 yards a catch last year at TCU. He has stat lines, like Moss-like stat lines sometimes, where it was like 4 for 160 and 2 touchdowns, right? Like, just incredible big playability. He can get open down the field at ease. He wins at the catch point down the field. He uses that contested catch ability at 6'4". I went back and watched the national championship game against Georgia, and if Duggan wasn't under siege the entire game, he got open down the field a couple times, for those big plays that he's known for. He's a runaway freight train with the football. If you can get him away from everybody, right? Like they did it was against Michigan, right? Where he came on the shallow and just takes a shallow drag 60 yards to the house. He can do that. If you ask him to cut at the top of the route and get open, he cannot do it. He wears coverage every single time. He went up against Julius Brents, who we both really like. He won every single time against Julius Brents. Every time he ran a vertical, he won. Though a couple of times that they asked him to run like an under or a slant or a dig, Brents was all over him. He can't separate at the top of the route. So unless they are going to be able to build an offense with this quarterback that can amplify a downfield threat like that, then Quentin Johnston is going to have a tough time in this offense. And I don't think he's N'Keal Harry. I don't. I think he's more explosive than N'Keal Harry, and I think that he's a much more of a specimen than N'Keal Harry was. But is he Chad Jackson? Maybe.
So Chad Jackson to me is the comp because Chad Jackson was an athlete. And again, we didn't think N'Keal Harry was N'Keal Harry. To me, it's simpler than that. And I know I sound like a broken record, but here we go. They need speed. They need speed. And people come back and say, well, Quentin Johnston's going to run a 4.4, like 4.4 flat.
Yeah.
If Quentin Johnson at 6'4", 215 runs a 4.4 flat, you're not getting him at 14.
Right.
He's going in the top 5.
Right.
If Quentin Johnson runs the 40 that justifies the Patriots drafting him, they will not be able to draft him. It's a Catch-22. I said the name of the show. He can't be fast enough for you and still be on the board at 14 because he does other things so well.
That twists the brain a little bit.
At that point, again, just take Jordan Addison.
Okay, so last thing on Quentin Johnston, and I'm sure we'll debate this until we're blue in the face for the next 2 months with people that disagree with me on this point. Or us, I should say, because I think you're on my side. I really just want to hammer home the point that I think he will be a good player in the league.
Yeah.
I don't think he will be the player he will not reach his potential with you.
Correct.
And that's what we're talking about here.
And that's not just a Quentin Johnson thing, and that's not a Patriots thing. There are players the Patriots could draft that I think would hit their potential here that wouldn't hit their potential elsewhere. This is how the whole draft works. I said this 2 years ago. I said we learned this lesson. I was going to make it a key point of whenever I cover the draft. So I'm going to bring it back. Will this player be good is not a question we can answer because it's the team that drafts the player makes such a difference. Look at what happened with Trevor Lawrence, right? Where does he have that bad first year if he doesn't go to Jacksonville? Let's say the Niners draft him. Does he have that lost first year? Does Zach Wilson completely fall apart if he goes to another team, right? It's at every position. Does Jamar Chase become Jamar Chase if he gets drafted by the Lions instead of the Bengals?
Right.
It's the team that drafts a player is such a part of the equation. So, yeah, with Quentin, and with certain guys, it's more true than others. There's some guys I think if they go anywhere, they'll succeed to a certain level. To me, a guy like Quentin Johnson, I would honestly say Johnson and Zay Flowers, this applies to both of them.
People are calling in to yell at me about
Their
this.
level of success will depend on where they end up in the scheme they end up in.
Very, very last thing on Quentin Johnson, I promise.
Is that he's terrible and you hate him.
No. Remember, I late in the process, I'm not going to say I discovered Christian Watson, but I started to really like Christian Watson. The difference that it's Eldred. I know he's calling in to argue about this.
Okay.
The difference between a guy like Quentin Johnson and Christian Watson was loose. Like, he was fluid in his movements, and you saw it when they schemed up touches for him on jet sweeps and stuff like that, where he could weave and he could cut and he could elude defenders. Quentin Johnson is just a runaway freight train, right? Like, that's what he is. And I just see a rigid athlete, and that terrifies me for them. I just don't think that they get the most out of those types of players.
And by the way, we didn't discover Christian Watson. Somebody on our old show on the YouTube feed commented and said, you guys need to check this guy out.
The next Randy Moss,
Yeah.
All right. Noah in Toronto. Thanks for hanging on, Noah. What's up?
Hey, I know you're talking about wide receivers today, but I actually had a question about tackle.
Sure.
So I think a common refrain on the show has been to sign one, draft one, but I guess I just wonder where Trent Brown fits into that. I think if you use a either first round or second round pick on a tackle and spend on like Mike McGlinchey or Orlando Brown, I feel like it's kind of not the best use of resources to be paying Trent Brown a fairly significant amount. So, I guess I'm just wondering how you guys view that.
Yeah, good. It's a good question, Noah. Thanks for calling in.
Soto, baby.
So, I'm still. What do you call it? Soto,
sign one, draft one.
I'm still in that school of thought for the most part, but I really love this tackle class, and now that we can say reportedly that Adrian Clem is supposed to be the offensive line coach next year, I'm a little bit more convinced that they can draft tackles and develop them.
Yeah.
So if that's I'm getting a little bit off the sign one train a little bit, because I think that let's take our boy DeJuan Jones from Ohio State. He's probably just a better player than Mike McGlinchey, right? Like,
yeah, I
shouldn't say he's a better player, but like kind of like what Noah was saying, like cost allocation, DeJuan Jones on a rookie contract or $60 million for Mike McGlinchey, right? That's the conversation.
So when I say sign one, draft one, I'm talking about one left, one right. And the thing with Trent is he had a down year. He's over 30, and he's on the final year of his contract anyway. So, and I hope I get the numbers right, because I know I saw Miguel is listening, and shout out to Miguel.
Yeah.
They save like $10 million, I believe, if they cut Trent Brown.
Yeah.
You can go and spend that money significantly. Like, that's a good player, $10 million. And then, so it's not, you get what I'm saying? You're not just like throwing money at a tackle who's not going to play. Even if Trent Brown comes back, though, you sign a guy to play opposite for him. I would still like, in a class that's this deep at tackle, draft a guy, and maybe it's not in the first round at that point. Maybe now we're getting in the second or third round, but use a premium pick. Draft a tackle on a guy who is going to sit behind Trent Brown this year and develop. And then next year, because you're not re-signing Trent Brown after this year, next year you have the guy you signed or drafted on one side, and you have this guy you drafted on the left side, right? So either like Trent Brown's almost irrelevant to this. They're going to need 2 tackles between this offseason and next season.
Yeah.
There's no way and depth.
They're going to need depth.
They only have 2 tackles under contract for next year right now.
That's why I think they need to double dip in the draft because and maybe the double dip, if they end up using it on a receiver or something, they trade the pick for a receiver or whatever, maybe it's just like what they just did with the Joneses where it's a 3rd and a 4th round double dip or something. I don't love that as much.
I still think
early and mid is where I would go with it too. I'm just saying, if they end up having to not pivot from that idea, then maybe that's something that they could do.
They need to come out of this offseason with at least one guaranteed plug-and-play starter or tackle, whether that's in free agency or the draft.
Yes.
At the same time, the second guy they add doesn't need to be plug-and-play, but he needs to be a guy that's ready to take over for Trent Brown in a year.
Yeah,
but
I don't mind the bridge Trent Brown.
Right.
I don't mind that.
I kind of like the idea of getting 2 plug-and-play guys in a year where tackles are so readily available because it might not look like this again next year.
Yeah.
I like the idea of getting 2 plug-and-play guys in a year where tackles are so readily available and then using that $10 million you would have spent on Trent Brown elsewhere.
Yeah. They can cut him. They can save a lot of money there.
What do you think James Bradbury's going to get on the open market?
After he held Juju Smith-Schuster or before?
After. We're living in this world. Like about $10 million probably,
10,
right?
12. Yeah.
I'd rather have James Bradbury than Trent Brown, even if it means I have to add another tackle.
Yeah. I'm all for throwing as many resources at tackle as you possibly can.
Yes. Especially like this year specifically,
because I think at wide receiver,
given who's available.
Like you need one. Right? Like you need one wide receiver.
Right.
I think at corner, you need one corner.
Right.
You need one 6'3" corner. Wherever you find him, it doesn't really matter. But you need one guy that can play the outside with some size.
Right.
At tackle, you need starters and you need depth.
Right.
Because your entire right tackle depth chart is a free agent.
Right.
Isaiah Wynn, Marcus Cannon, Yodney, McDermott. All of them are free agents. So you need depth. You just need numbers. And you also need starting caliber players. But maybe the answer, just to throw some names out there, because I don't hate Trent Brown as a bridge if you draft more of like a developmental tackle. Like a guy like Jalen Duncan from Maryland.
Sure, yeah.
He's extremely athletic, has all the tools to play left tackle in the league, but super raw. Like his technique is really needs a lot of work. Would it benefit him? I don't know if it would benefit him sitting just because of practice rules, but that's a whole different can of worms.
Yep.
But would it benefit him sitting behind Trent Brown for a year and then taking over in his second season? Maybe.
By the way, Miguel still listening. Awesome.
Love that. Thanks,
$7.25 million they save if they cut him. $10.25 if they trade him. So either way, that's significant money.
Yeah. All right, David. What's up, David?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey,
good. Thanks.
So I had my first thing I had on the draft. So I know you got to cover all your bases when you're preparing for the draft, but I feel like I haven't really covered much in the receivers this year as much as I did last year because I just don't see us taking a receiver in round 1. When Zay Flowers was like a second-round pick, I was interested in him, and I still love Zay Flowers, but as soon as he kind of rose into being a first-round pick, I'm like, I don't think we're going to get him. So I'm a big fan of taking a tackle in round 1, preferably Skronsky if he's there. And then I just wanted to get your thoughts on some receivers. I don't know if you touched on this in the beginning of the show, but some potential receivers that we could get for rumors. I heard, I don't know how true this is, but the Felger and Maz report about Deebo Samuel. And then maybe Keenan Allen as free agent signing.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up Keenan Allen, David. And your show said that about Deebo Samuel.
They did. Jimmy Stewart.
Your show.
Jimmy's phone knows. Let me say this about Zay Flowers real quick, because he said that thing about I like Zay Flowers in the second, but not in the first. Zay Flowers' stock is from here is probably going to drop.
Yeah.
And that's not a slight at Zay Flowers, but what happens coming out of the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl is so the top tier, like the top tier players don't participate.
They're really
in those
running
things.
with this Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, they have it on right now.
Yeah.
The top tier of guys don't participate in either of those games, right? So you see guys like Zay Flowers, or even further down, like a guy like DeMario Douglas. I showed you the chart of where his like consensus stock is. It shot up after the Shrine Bowl.
Yeah.
Zay Flowers, he wasn't competing against Jordan Addison. He wasn't competing against Jackson Smith and Jigba. It was just him. that's why his stock went through the roof, because he was in the spotlight. Once the first real, we use these projections a ton, and it is what we have to go by right now. The projections don't, the first time the projections become real is after the combine.
Yeah.
Because Jordan Addison's going to show up at the combine and remind everybody why he's Jordan Addison. And it's going to, some people have Zay ahead of him right now. That's not going to happen once the combine happens,
crazy.
right? And this is going to happen at all these other positions too. Everybody's all high on DeJuan Jones. Well, four of the other top 5 tackles we haven't heard from in the last couple months.
Yeah. I think that I think Zay's an end of the first round pick.
I think he's an end of the first round. Yeah. People talking about him going in the top 15, that's just prisoner of the moment from the Shrine.
Yeah, I think he's end of the first round. Hollywood Brown, Brandon Cooks, right? I think Brandon Cooks was 24, 25, 26 in his year. That's the type of guy that he is, and I think he's right there. All right, Eldred, lay it on me, Eldred.
Hey, Evan. Hey. I'm not going to lay it on you, bro. I like you. But those tackles, through most of the draft, they're going to be gone before they even get to 10. Most of those tackles.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
But Quentin, I can't understand why you think the guy is slow, because he's 6'4". He's a speedster.
I don't think he's slow.
He also he's not slow at all.
He's not slow.
I'd say about a 4.38, maybe a 4.4.
Not slow.
He gets open and he separates.
I don't think he's slow. We can.
But I'll say this:
that out
if that guy runs 4.38, he's a top 5 pick. We can stop talking about him.
Oh, he is. Houston, they got him going to Houston at 12.
Yeah, he's not slow. No, definitely not slow. I just don't think I don't think he gets open at the first and second level, Eldred. On a slant, on an under, on a dig, on routes underneath the defense. And I get that that's not necessarily what you're asking him to do either, but that's what they ask receivers to do here. And I don't think that he's got the route running ability to thrive here. And I don't know if they necessarily – I don't have confidence in them developing him into that type of player or using him correctly. So that's sort of where I'm at with Quentin Johnston. It's not about Quentin Johnston. It's about the Patriots.
Patriots, okay. But I have seen him run slants and stuff in ends. But, see, I said the same thing about DK Metcalf, and we picked the darn Harry. And Fred them said the same thing. He's just a one-trick pony.
So let me –
he came in and took our all-pro cornerback and made him look like he was a ballerina.
So, Eldred, let me ask you this, though, because we brought this up earlier because I think DK is a good example. Do you think DK Metcalf becomes DK Metcalf if the Patriots drafted him?
Yeah, with Brady, when Brady was still here, yeah, because that had been his breakout receiver. And then open up the middle. I think he would have been. Plus, you had Josh McDaniels here. So that would have worked. And that's what I kept saying. And me and Big Head, we wanted him. And then I'm like I told Paul, he don't remember, he owed me a dinner. I told him, anybody they picked before Harry and after Harry, I have a better season than he do, and I bet you a dinner. We bet it, but he ain't paid up yet.
Well, I'll say that. Do you remember who
was there?
You mentioned the coaching staff. Do you remember who the wide receiver coach was that year?
Oh, boy.
Troy Brown.
It was Joe Judge.
It was Joe
who was
Judge.
Also the special teams coordinator.
It's bad.
The wide receiver coach was Joe Judge in 2019?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
It was bad.
2019? Oh, man.
Bad
I didn't know that. I
times.
thought it was Troy.
So
No, Troy came.
Troy, I think, might have been.
He was the running backs coach that year.
Yeah, I think he might have been on the staff already. But yeah, Eldred, I think that's just we both like Quentin Johnston in a vacuum, just on his own, right? I think we both.
Oh, Troy wasn't here yet.
Think he's a great talent. We're just not convinced that the Patriots would be the best fit for him in terms of scheme and all, and development and all that kind of stuff.
One question. I know this might be a guess with y'all, but I'll ask you one question. Why they didn't bring Sean Jeffries as a
Jefferson
wide receiver, with Billy O'Brien instead of keeping Troy Brown as wide receiver? Because after last year, I think he failed as a coach too, as coaching those wide receivers up. It's NFL quality.
It's a fair point, and thanks for the call, Eldred. We're just up against it a little bit. Troy Brown, we got an email about this earlier as well, Alex, about why is Troy Brown not in the crosshairs a little bit more after the way the wide receivers performed last year. We were on this a little bit. I brought it up a little bit during the season about how you got to call a spade a spade. And when the wide receivers are running bad routes and have terrible spacing and are not technically sound, and some of it has to come on their position coach, right? Not all of it, but some of it. And so I think that's definitely fair. I think the problem with Sean Jefferson or Keenan McCardell, I don't think that they were coming here for lateral moves.
Right. It would have been a lateral move. If you wanted them here, that you would have had to make them the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where they sort of lost out on that. Maybe it's Ross Douglas. Maybe he ends up developing into a little bit. He's the assistant wide receiver coach right now. But yeah, I'm with everybody where I wish that. Nothing against Troy. I love Troy as a player, and I think he's a good guy. But I just think that maybe a little bit of help there wouldn't kill anybody.
Right.
Maybe it is Ross Douglas, or maybe Bill O'Brien being back and having a respectable NFL caliber scheme will change that. There was one other thing that I can't remember which caller brought it up, was Keenan Allen. I wanted to talk about that. I'm not in on Keenan Allen. I'm not. I love how Keenan Allen plays football.
Yeah.
I think he's a great player. I think he was a great player. I'm really weary of injuries with him. Like and it's not like he doesn't have like, I don't think, like a torn Achilles or a torn ACL on his injury history, but he's got all these nagging like hamstring pulls, and like he just seems to always miss like 3 or 4 games a year, and then a couple more games he plays, but he's limited, right? Like there's always these soft tissue injuries, and maybe it's just the Chargers training staff. No offense.
Look, Hunter Henry, we said this about him, and he came here. I think he's missed 1 game his whole time, if that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind Keenan Allen. He's not at the top of my list. Like, they could do a lot worse, but he's been the most targeted receiver in the NFL the last 2 years. He was great for Justin Herbert's development. So seeing what he does for a young quarterback, like that part of it intrigues me. But yeah, the injuries, the age.
Yeah.
Again, they could do worse. They could do better, but they could do worse.
All right, Nick in Rhode Island. What's up, Nick?
Hey guys, how are you? My two
good.
favorite guys from this draft are Tank Dell and Cody Mock. I know that Tank is
Cody
short size and everything, which is disappointing. Cody Mock, though, how do we get him on this team? His mentality is incredible.
Now Nick is speaking my language.
Evan wants to take the FCS guard.
I've watched all his interviews. The guy has like an incredible mentality. I went as far as looking at his Instagram. Like I saw like a back and forth with him and his sister. This is how deep I'm going with this guy. And they're like talking to each other about, I'm going to throw you in a haystack and like bury you. Like they're messing with each other. Like this guy's like corn-fed, off the farm.
Eats nails, right? He eats nails.
Yeah, he's amazing. If you watch his tape, he's so athletic. The way he moves, very smooth.
This is a great
call. He played
call.
hockey too. So I know we have it's kind of a jigsaw puzzle getting tackles and line on our team right now with all the needs. How do we fit this guy in our team? If I'm a coach, I want this mentality on my team. What's the way that we can get him on the squad?
Awesome call, Nick. Fantastic
I cannot
call.
believe I am sitting here with Evan Lazar geeking out about an FCS guard missing teeth with long hair. This is the guy.
This guy eats nails for breakfast.
This is the
He's
guy.
Got hammers.
Evan
in his
has
belt.
hated for years. For years, I bring this guy up, and Evan rolls his eyes at me. We did it with Troy Anderson last year. We did it with all of these guys last year. We did past years.
But this guy's a hog molly, Alex. This guy's nasty. He's nasty. All right, he buries people into the ground. He churns them out. The problem is he's a freaking guard. If he just had some longer arms,
you don't think there's
any
chance he can play tackle in the NFL? You think there's no chance?
I very little.
Okay.
I think he could play tackle, like everybody,
right.
Could play tackle at this level. Like once we're talking about this level, we're talking about guys that can play NFL football, but he's got issues beyond just his length, with foot speed and ability to kind of get out to landmarks on an island and redirect and change direction. It kills me. I did wide receivers already, as you know. I'm doing tackles and corners as well before the combine, and I might even put Cody Mock as with an asterisk
honorable
at the bottom.
mention.
Yeah, because he is an awesome offensive lineman, but he's a guard. He is a guard. And some people actually think that his best position might actually end up being center because he's going to be like Jason Kelsey at center, right? But
this is unreal. I'm sorry. You like you're super into the kicker?
Yeah.
You're super into
the kicker.
The North Dakota State guard?
This is what happens when you take me to the Shrine Bowl and I start to look
Cody
at
Mock wasn't even at the Shrine Bowl.
I know, but he's at I watched the Senior
Bowl. This is
Bowl.
unbelievable.
This guy just puts people in the dirt and then he laughs at you afterwards.
We are 3 years away from you eclipsing eclipsing me and trying to take the Navy fullback in the first round.
No. You wanted to take the Andre Carter from Army.
I never said I wanted to.
Cody Mock
I never
threw him
said
at
I wanted
the
to.
freaking club at,
Everybody
at the
threw him
Senior
out of the
Bowl.
club.
My goodness.
Everybody threw him out of the
guy
club.
had a tough week.
He
All
did.
right, so I love that Cody Mock call. Let's go rapid fire through
Yeah.
the next tiers of wide receivers, and we'll wrap here. So at number 5, I have all these guys kind of in that day 2, same sort of round range. Josh Downs from North Carolina, who I mocked in 1.0. Really like his game. Your guy, Keyshawn Butte from LSU.
Too low. Too low. He's the guy.
And actually, I'm going to say those 2 guys. I think the next guys are kind of in a tier 3.
I think so. But let me just say this about Butte real quick.
Go ahead.
And you wrote this. If they really are sniffing around on Deebo Samuel, and that's the guy they want.
You were going to love that.
And that's the guy they want. Keyshawn Butte.
Am I wrong?
Remember? No, you're not. Remember how I said
Deebo.
before, just because a guy doesn't go in the first round doesn't mean he's not a first-round talent?
Yeah.
Keyshawn Butte is a first-round talent. And frankly, if the other stuff is, if the rumors are correct about what the other stuff is,
It's bad.
it's really not that bad. He didn't break any laws.
Yes, he did. This is not a conversation
No,
we can have.
first-round
on the air.
talent. First-round football talent. I'm in. I am so in on him at 46.
He's definitely first-round football talent. I just looked it up. He's not quite as thick as Deebo.
Well, you got to add 10 pounds for when he gets in the NFL weight room.
But he's 6 feet 205.
And Deebo's what, like 6 foot 215?
No, yeah, like 220, 215. Yeah, Deebo's thick. You know, that guy's a staunch build.
All right, well,
but
Butte can get there.
But Butte's got that. He's not like a jitterbug like Zay Flowers. He's not overly elusive in that sense, but he's elusive in the I'm really fast and really big sense where it's like hard to tackle.
He will also
right?
he will sneaky run over you, run through you. He is and this is the same about Deebo. He's like kind of a power runner.
He's exactly like
he's like sort of a power back.
Yes.
So Butte at 46, I love it. I would love that pick.
Out of all of like let's just take a big swing on day 2, Butte's the guy. If you're just trying to swing big,
give me the ceiling. Give me the boom.
He's the guy.
Give me the boom.
But if I'm the Patriots and if I'm any other team that's really considering drafting him, you better really do your homework.
The meeting
on that
will
kid.
be important. The meeting will be very important.
Yeah, but he definitely has that Deebo. I'll call him mini Deebo because he's not quite as big as Deebo, I don't think. But he's got that Deebo running ability where when he gets the football in his hands, he's a running back.
Yeah,
he's a running back.
I'll tell you, he's like, I know you don't like the fact that how little he played. When he's on the field, he's a gamer. That dude is tough. He'll go over the middle, take a shot, pop right back up, and go again. You can't intimidate that guy.
No, I like his game. I do. I was arguing just to argue with you all about that. All right, so we got Butte and Josh Downs in that next tier. Josh Downs from UNC, kind of like a Zay Flowers light, right? Like sort of like in that Zay Flowers conversation.
I don't think he's that athletic. I think he's like his ceiling's like a better version of Jakobi Meyers.
Yeah, he's a little. I think what I like about him is he's 5'10", and that low center of gravity. He really plays into that, where he can get low and really sink in and out of a cut and really change directions on people.
I also think like he's just super consistent.
Yeah,
the guy doesn't have. When I say he doesn't have good games, he doesn't have bad games. It's not to say he doesn't produce, but he's gonna his stat line, his production is so consistent. You know what you're getting from him play in and play out, and that's so underrated.
Last thing I'll mention about Butte, what worries me about Butte is not that they're going to miss on the talent. What worries me is that he's going to be awesome for like 2 games, and then we're never going to hear from him again because he gets hurt or something like that, right? Like,
I'll take the risk.
I don't want to do that. It's going to break my heart. I don't want to see that happen. All right, here comes like the last tier here, I guess we can call it. Tank Dell.
Yeah.
Nathaniel Dell from Houston.
Would be a first-round pick if not for his size.
He's Marcus Jones, but he's a receiver.
Yeah.
5'8", 160, absolutely tiny. Like, literally absolutely tiny.
But let me ask you this, pound for pound, is there a more explosive player in this draft?
He's up there, and he took over on returns for Marcus Jones, and Marcus Jones came to the NFL for the Pats. He's literally Marcus Jones, but just instead of a corner, he's a receiver. That's who he is. I really like this player. I wish he was better at the Senior Bowl from what I saw at the Senior Bowl. Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State. Some people got him all wrong. We talked about this. We were texting about this.
Yeah.
And some people think that he's like a big body outside, X receiver, wins jump balls. No, this is a big slot.
Yep.
He's Jakobi Meyers.
Jakobi Meyers, Tyler Boyd. He's that group.
Which that's not to say that he can't. What when he wins contested is like over the middle contested, right? Where he's in traffic and he's got to catch the football and hang tough with it. He has that Jakobi, like that sudden change of direction where he's not like very fast in a straight line, but he's just got that little, shake in his game. When he cuts, you can like kind of see it pop, right? Or he gets in and out of that break. Like I said, I wish he was a little bit more. I wish he was better in the film I saw from Mobile, but I think one-on-ones is maybe not where he's gonna thrive. Because he doesn't have that pure athleticism, like guys like Tank Dell or the kid from Michigan State, Reed. Right?
Reed.
Yeah, like those guys are going to pop because they're just fast, right?
Yeah.
But he's not really like that. Another guy that I think is a little bit forgotten at times in this class is Marvin Mims from Oklahoma. He's really fast. That's definitely like bottom line, right? Really, really explosive, really fast receiver. He's somebody that fits that speed slot role if that's sort of what you want.
I'll say this about Marvin Mims. There is not a player in this class that is better at making spectacular catches than Marvin Mims. And weigh that however you want. Go back, and one catch does not define evaluation, but I will urge people this. Look up the catch.
This is an Aaron Dobson situation.
Look up no, because he's done a little
or
bit.
N'Keal Harry against SC.
Look up the catch Marvin Mims made in the 2021 Red River game. That might be it's a top 3 greatest football catch I've ever seen. It is unbelievable. And then he also made the catch of the year last year against Texas Tech.
Yeah, so he was somebody. What's the?
So let me say it. Body control, elite body control.
Yeah, and speed. What's the wide receiver award in college football that gets
the Blitnikoff?
Yeah, Blitnikoff. He was a finalist for the Blitnikoff, and it went to the guy that I want to touch on really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Here at the end, that's not even on this list or an honorable mention for a reason. Number 10, Cedric Tillman from Tennessee.
Yeah.
I wanted to include another big body X receiver on this list.
Yeah, I think you have him too high.
I like Tillman a lot. What I really liked about him was if you're going to be that player, if you're going to be an X receiver, outside boundary receiver, you got to be able to stop. And I know that sounds so silly when I say that. But what I mean by that
changing directions
is it's not just change of direction. It's like when you get vertical, right? If you can stop it down on a dime, that's really, really helpful because then you separate on back shoulders, come back, stop routes.
Brandon Cooks was very good at this.
So you need to be able to get that corner to drive by, right? Where you're running, the corner's running, you stop on that dime, and he keeps going, and you're down and open, right?
Right.
I think that a guy that really could have benefited from that is somebody like N'Keal Harry. If he had that ability, then I think he would have been a much better NFL prospect. I think Cedric Tillman has that ability. You watch him against Keely Ringo from Georgia, who has some change of direction and hip stiffness issues, and he just ate him up underneath the defense, right? He would just get vertical, get on that vertical stem, stop it down, and Keely Ringo would be like, bye-bye, right? Like, just watch him run by you. That's a guy that I can get behind there. Cedric Tillman, like his skill set for that bigger body X receiver where I think he has a little bit of fluidity and stop-start ability. The guy that I did not do you have a big take on Cedric Tillman? No,
I want to ask you about 2 of your honorable mentions real quick, but you're going to talk about Jalen Hyatt.
I need to talk about Jalen Hyatt.
Yeah.
He's not on the list.
You hate Jalen Hyatt.
I do hate Jalen Hyatt. I'll admit it. Like, I don't hate him.
He's literally making catches behind us on the TV right
I
now.
don't mean I hate him as a person. All right? I hate him as a prospect. Okay? Because this is a problem that people need to get their head around when it comes to evaluating these receivers, and that is that college football is fugazi, all right? It's not real, okay? A lot of the things that they do at college football with the way that they use receivers, especially in that Tennessee offense, is not translatable to the NFL. So what they used to do with Hyatt is they put him in a stack, right? So we have a receiver in front of him, and then he'd be behind him, and they'd be all the way out wide, like outside the numbers out wide, and then the guy would literally just run like a pick for him so that he could get off the line of scrimmage, okay? Yeah. So the guy would just block for him essentially, and then Hyatt would just run behind him and get open. And as soon as Hyatt gets to that top gear, he can run through any defense. I'll give him that. He's the fastest dude alive in a straight line. But at the NFL level, in order to be like a true 1,000-yard, big-time production receiver, you need to be able to beat press coverage. And I have no evidence whatsoever from his film because all they did at Tennessee was scheme him away from press coverage, whether it was motion, alignment, whatever. So I don't know if he can beat press coverage because he never did it. I don't know if he can run another route besides a vertical. All he ran was verticals. And that works at the college level, but when you get up here, ask Tyquan Thornton. Like, once you get up to the NFL, everybody is just as fast as you are. You are no longer just the fastest kid on the playground. That doesn't apply unless you're Tyreek Hill. All right, so that's a problem that I have with Jalen Hyatt.
They're just guys that their whole life have won by being fast, so they don't necessarily develop the rest of the skill set. I think with Hyatt, a lot of people look at the game he had against Alabama, and they say 5 touchdowns against Alabama.
Yeah.
There must be something there. As impressive as that was, and it truly was impressive, you can't build an entire draft report off of one game. You just can't do it.
Right.
You have to look at the full body of work. All right, I want to ask you about 2 of your honorable mentions. Rakim Jarrett from Maryland.
Yes.
Is a guy I actually really think
He almost was 10 on this list.
he should have been.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I'm trying to pull something up real quick. Rakim Jarrett is a guy I think the Patriots would like, and a big part of that reason is they have historically liked guys, and J.C. Jackson fits into this. Who are the other examples? And I'm blanking, but there's a bunch. Guys who are high-ranked recruits coming out of high school who maybe didn't...
Byron Cowart.
Byron Cowart's another
Byron
one.
Cowart?
Who maybe didn't click in college, especially at smaller programs, to see what's untapped. I want to pull up the recruit rankings from that year, but Rakim Jarrett in the slot, one of these guys that can create after the catch in the 3rd or 4th round, just checks a ton of boxes for them.
Yeah, he's a little, you mentioned like guys like Hardman and Kadarius Toney. And I think he's got that type of speed. I don't know if he's got that type of ball carrying skill necessarily like Toney does, but he's got that kind of speed.
So here we go. Hang on. The 24/7 who does the big recruiting list.
Yeah.
This is the 2020 class wide receiver rankings.
Yeah.
Julian Fleming's still in school. He's at Ohio State. Kayshawn Boutte. I'm just going to skip the guys who are still in school. So Kayshawn Boutte, then Rakim Jarrett.
Yeah.
Who was originally committed to LSU, switched to Maryland. Then Jackson Smith and Jigba. And then you got to go way down to get and then Quentin Johnson's down at 14. Josh Downs is at 17.
Patriots are out.
Well,
not a good enough high school prospect.
Marvin Mims at 29. But here's my point. Jalen Hyatt's at 33. In terms of the high school rank, which don't dictate everything, of course. You're not drafting out the high school rankings, but it is something I think the Patriots like to look at. Rakim Jarrett's only behind Kayshawn Boutte from that class.
Yeah. I like Rakim Jarrett. I liked what I saw out of him. He was one of the last guys that I watched, and if I didn't want to pigeonhole another outside receiver like Cedric Tillman into this list, he probably would have made the list. The other guy that I would just mention really quickly is your guy, Charlie Jones.
So, okay.
I can't believe you didn't mention it.
Well, no, I said I wanted to ask you about 2 of your honorable mentions.
There we go.
You finally watched Charlie Jones. I've been begging you to watch Charlie Jones.
I didn't do a full thing on him, but I did enough to put him on the list.
Jakobi Meyers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Straight up. Straight up.
So I will say this really quickly, though.
And we've compared half these receivers to Jakobi Meyers, but it's that kind of draft.
He's not Cooper Kupp.
He's not Cooper. No.
Okay.
No, he's not.
And I don't think he's even Hunter Renfrow. Right?
No, he's closer to Renfrow than Kupp.
Right,
no.
but I don't want to get this out there that this guy is like the next Cooper Kupp. That's not the case. But he was ultra productive.
He's going to go 7 yards. He's going to find the hole in the coverage. He's going to catch the ball and get tackled, and he's going to do that 15 times a game. But that's what he does.
And I'm not. This is, I think, still kind of we're still in that ceiling territory. Yeah. But I always look at guys like that, like Danny Amendola, right? No,
Amendola is much faster than he is, and Charlie Jones is much bigger.
Okay, so you think he's better than or different than Amendola?
Very different than Amendola.
Okay,
to me, we've compared a lot of players to Jakobi Meyers in this, but we said
Xavier Hutchinson literally is Jakobi Myers.
I don't see a huge difference between Xavier Hutchinson and Charlie Jones, except Xavier Hutchinson's a little bit bigger.
Yeah, and that's why I like him. I like the catch radius. All right, so there's the wide receivers. We're going to be back next week on Thursday to do Combine preview because I'll be headed out to Indy on Tuesday of the following week. So we'll do a full Combine preview on Thursday in the show next week. We'll talk arm lengths. We'll talk 40-yard dashes. What else? We'll talk, hand sizes, right? Yeah, we'll get into it. It'll be fun. So we'll see you guys then, and thanks so much for listening.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.